When we first meet Klaus Mikaelson in the second season of the Vampire Diaries, he arrives in Mystic Falls like a hurricane. He kills without hesitation. He manipulates everyone around him without a second thought. He builds a reputation as the most feared creature in the supernatural world, a hybrid who spent 1,000 years refining every part of himself into a weapon. For years, that is the only version of Klaus we see. The monster, the big bad that even the most powerful characters in the show shrink away from. We write him off as a creature born to do evil, someone who takes joy in the pain of others, someone who can never be anything more than the terror he inflicts on the world. This narrative is easy to hold on to. It fits the simple structure of the stories we tell ourselves about good and evil. We want clear lines between the hero and the villain. We want to know who to root for and who to hate. Klaus fits the villain role perfectly on the surface. He has no regard for human life. He betrays even the people closest to him when it serves his purpose. He spends centuries chasing power and control, leaving a trail of blood and broken bodies in his wake. There is no shortage of terrible acts to point to when we call him a monster. But if we take the time to look past the surface, we find a far more complicated story. A story that does not excuse his actions, but gives them context that most casual viewers never stop to unpack. I have rewatched every episode of The Vampire Diaries and the originals more times than I can count. And every time I go back to Klaus's arc, I see new cracks in the monster mask he wears. I see the boy underneath the rage. The boy who never got a chance to be anything else. The boy who built the monster around himself like a suit of armor, because it was the only way he knew how to survive. Klaus Mikaelson spent 1,000 years perfecting the art of being a monster. He learned to strike first before anyone could strike him. He learned to make people fear him, because fear was the only thing he could rely on to keep himself safe. He learned to shut down every part of himself that could feel pain, or love, or vulnerability, because every time he let those parts show, he was punished for it. Over a millennium, that armor became his identity. The monster became who he was, not just what he wore to protect himself. But here is the quiet truth that sits at the heart of his entire story. It only took one heartbeat to dismantle his legacy of terror. It only took the birth of his daughter, Hope Mikaelson, to crack open that armor and let the light in. For 1,000 years, he ran from the one thing he wanted more than anything in the world: unconditional love, more than he feared death itself. Because love meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant the chance to be hurt again. This is the core question we are going to unpack across this entire series. Can a monster truly find redemption through the very thing he feared most? Can a man who spent 1,000 years building his life around pain and control ever learn to live through love? Can the cycle of violence that defined his family for centuries ever be broken by a child who was born into the very chaos that created it? These are not just hypothetical questions for a fictional character. They are questions that hit on something deeply human. We all have parts of ourselves that we hide away, parts that we are ashamed of, parts that we think make us unlovable. We all build armor to protect ourselves from the world, and we all wonder if there's anything that can break through that armor and let us be seen for who we really are. Before we dive into the details of Klaus's redemption, we have to be clear about one thing. This series is not an attempt to justify the terrible things Klaus did. He killed thousands of innocent people over 1,000 years. He tortured and manipulated his own siblings for centuries. He destroyed entire communities for his own gain. He inflicted pain on nearly every person he ever met. None of that can be erased. But none of that can be excused. Redemption does not mean erasing the harm you have done. It means acknowledging it and choosing to do better, even when it costs you everything. What we are going to do here is look at the full picture of Klaus Mikaelson. We are going to look at the trauma that created the monster. We are going to look at the defense mechanisms he built to survive that trauma, and how those mechanisms eventually became a prison he could not escape. We are going to look at how the birth of his daughter changed every single part of who he was, and forced him to confront the parts of himself he had buried for 1,000 years. We are going to look at how he fought to break the cycle of violence that had defined his family for generations, so that his daughter would never have to carry the same burden he did. And we are going to look at his final sacrifice, and what it really means for his legacy. Too often, we reduce fictional characters to simple labels, but real people are not that simple. And the best fictional characters are the ones that feel like real people. Klaus Mikaelson is not a perfect hero. He is not a pure villain. He is a deeply broken man who spent 1,000 years running from his pain and finally found the courage to face it for the sake of the person he loved most. That is the story we are here to tell. Not the story of a monster, but the story of a man who was trapped in a monster's body and finally found his way out. We have to start at the beginning. To understand how Klaus became the man we meet in Mystic Falls, we have to go back to the very start of his story. We have to go back to his childhood, to the man who created the blueprint for his paranoia and his rage. We have to go back to Mikael, the man who Klaus called father, the man who spent 1,000 years hunting him across the world, the man whose ghost haunted Klaus every single day of his long life, even after he was dead. Mikael is the root of every single part of Klaus's trauma. He is the architect of the paranoia that defined Klaus's 1,000-year reign of terror. He is the reason Klaus built his identity around being a monster. Because Mikael taught him, from the day he was born, that he was not worthy of love, that he was a mistake, that he was a monster. And Klaus spent the rest of his life living up to that label, because it was the only thing he ever knew. In the next chapter, we are going to break down exactly how Mikael's abuse shaped Klaus's entire psyche. We are going to look at how the constant threat of violence and rejection forced Klaus to build a defense mechanism so strong it took over his entire identity. We are going to talk about how the always and forever vow, the promise that was supposed to keep his family together, became a cage of codependency that trapped them all for centuries. And we are going to lay the groundwork for how that cage was finally broken, by the birth of a child that no one ever expected. For now, I want you to hold on to that core question we started with. Can a monster truly find redemption through unconditional love? As we walk through every step of Klaus's journey, I want you to ask yourself that question again and again. I want you to look past the monster mask and see the man underneath. I want you to see the pain and the fear and a desperate need to be loved that drove every single one of his actions, even the most terrible ones. This is not a story about excusing evil. This is a story about understanding it. This is a story about how even the darkest soul can be changed by love. This is a story about how fatherhood can rewrite a legacy that was built on 1,000 years of terror. This is the story of Klaus Mikaelson, beyond the villain label, beyond the monster. The full, complicated human story of a man who spent 1,000 years running and finally found a reason to stop. We often talk about redemption as a single moment, a single choice that erases all the bad that came before it. But redemption is not a single moment. It is a journey. It is 1,000 small choices made every single day to be better than you were the day before. It is facing the harm you have done and taking responsibility for it, even when it is hard, even when it costs you everything. Klaus's redemption journey did not start with his final sacrifice. It started the moment he held his daughter for the first time. It started the moment he realized he had something to lose that was more precious than his own power. It started the moment he decided he would do anything to protect his daughter from the pain he had carried for 1,000 years. Over the course of this series, we're going to walk through that journey step by step. We are going to start with the trauma that created the monster. We are going to look at how that trauma shaped every part of his life and every choice he made. We are going to look at how the birth of his daughter shattered the world he had built for himself and forced him to confront everything he had buried. We are going to look at how he fought to break the cycle of generational violence that had defined his family for centuries. We are going to look at how he learned to sacrifice for the people he loved, instead of demanding sacrifice from them. And we're going to end with his final choice and what it means for his legacy and for the daughter he gave his life to protect. If you are only here for the villain story, that is fine. You can keep the simple narrative of Klaus Mikaelson the monster, but if you are willing to look deeper, you will find a story that is far more powerful and far more human than you ever expected. You will find a story about how even the most broken among us can find redemption. How even the darkest soul can be changed by love. How even 1,000 years of terror can be undone by a single choice to be better. That is the story we are here to tell. The full story of Klaus Mikaelson, the boy who was broken by his father, the man who became a monster to survive, the father who gave up everything to save his daughter, the soul that found redemption even after 1,000 years of darkness. And it all starts with the ghost of Mikael and the architecture of paranoia that he built inside Klaus's mind 1,000 years before Hope Mikaelson was even born.